Alright, it's time to talk about this Weizen project that I've got going on. I brewed 3 Berliner Weissens. They were brewed pretty close together with some different ideas going on with them, and I wanted to see how they turned out. I have a slightly deeper look at all 3 of these independently from each other on my Instagram. You can follow me there for some deeper dives into individual beer projects that I got going on. It's probably going to be a little bit more up to date than the YouTube videos and things like that. With all that said, let's get down to business. From left to right, we have just the regular old Berliner Weissen. Here in the middle, we have the prickly pear Weizen. And then to the right, we have the Sundew Weizen. So this recipe that I used on all 3 are not my own recipe. I started off with a friend's recipe that he supplied me, and then I went ahead and kind of spaced out while I was gathering grains at the grain store and accidentally grabbed the wrong wheat. So I went ahead and rolled with it. I kept the same grain bill for all 3, so that way I'd have one less variable there after it's all said and done to account for. So now we're going to get into the ingredients of this. This was for a 5-gallon batch. So we used RO water. We gathered enough water to be able to boil. I went ahead and treated the water with water salts. What we did here is in Beersmith, we aimed for the balanced yellow profile. For malts, we started off with 52.8 Pilsner 2-row, 33% white wheat, 14.2% flaked wheat. We mashed in at 148 degrees Fahrenheit. Boiled for 15 minutes just to kind of sterilize everything, make sure that there wasn't anything in there that wasn't supposed to be there. So we no chilled, pitched the lacto at 95 degrees Fahrenheit, kept it at 95 for 3 days. At the end of about 3 days, took a sample and taste tested it. I didn't use a pH meter or anything on these. I was just going off a taste just to see where it was at. Pretty much all 3 of them on day 3, it felt like it was time to go ahead and pull it and continue the boil. So on the second part of the boil, boiled for a total of 45 minutes. 15 minutes to the end of the boil, I used 0.22 ounces of Magnum for a total 5.5 IBUs. As we closed in on the end of the boil, I used 1 Whirlfloc Tablet and put some yeast nutrients in there at the same time. No chilled again. Then it was just room temperature fermentation. All 3 of these beers are bottled conditioned. For both the Berliner Weissen and the prickly pear, we used Omega Yeast Lacto OYL605 and Omega Yeast Hornindal Kveik OYL091. Yeast and lacto for the Sundew was White Labs Lacto 672. My local brew shop that I've been using, they were out of the Omega Lacto blend. And then I used the Omega Yeast Sundew OYL 401. For the prickly pear, I added 36 ounces of juice from fresh frozen prickly pears that I had processed. I started off with about 1.5 gallons worth of juice, boiled it down to 36 ounces and put it in the fermentation as I saw it starting to slow down. So now after sitting down with all 3 beers and studying them, I prefer the regular Berliner Weissen. I think it was a close second for the Sundew. The regular Berliner Weissen, it's nice, it's tart, it's refreshing, it's easy, it's approachable. The Sundew it's also a good beer. It's about as good as the Berliner. My thing against it personally, and this is probably something that I did in making of this one, or maybe I was just too hyped up about it, didn't temper my expectations very well on it, was it has the fruit taste, it had the sweetness, but I think maybe the lacto is taken away from it a little bit. Maybe I could have done something different with the fermentation temperature control. Maybe it would have picked up some more on that. The prickly pear isn't a bad beer at all, really. In most cases, everybody that I've shared it with, they really liked it. I liked it too pretty well. I am a little disappointed that the prickly pear taste didn't come across as strong as other times that I've brewed with it, but that's probably because I lost some of that fruit taste from boiling it as long as I did, knocking it down from the 1.5 gallons to 36 ounces. The reason I did this though was because when I've brewed with raw prickly pears before, fermentation has kind of gone haywire, gone its own way. It becomes quite the chore to get all that stuff out of the fermenter when you're taking your beer and trying to put it in the bottling bucket, or you're even trying to bottle it. It becomes a pretty big deal. I know that there are a few variables here in this little project that I've done that make it a little less than scientific, such as the lacto switch up. But after going down this path, I think the next set of blenders that I try to make, I think I want to start off with, instead of using my taste buds to tell me when it's ready for the second boil, use a pH meter. I think I want to start with that. I would definitely like to start playing around a little bit more with fruit with these beers. Maybe co-pitch some different yeast combos or try that Philly sour yeast. I've also had a non-kettle sour example of this. It had lacto and Brett thrown in it in primary fermentation, and that was a really good beer, so maybe that's another idea to try out. Generally speaking, with this style and this project, I think I've grown a better appreciation towards sour beers, smaller, lower ABV beers. I definitely plan on trying to make a few more, make them better, and have a lot more fun with them. I've got another sour beer actually in the fermenter right now. It's not a Berliner Weisse, but we'll get to that later. Thanks for joining, guys. Catch you later.